Hey there everyone, my name is Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel, where you'll find some of the most fair and honest game reviews out here. And finally, we're returning to a series that I've reviewed on the channel here before, The Legacy of Kain. And what's funny is that we're looking at the supposed final chapter of this series, but so many people bring this up where they want to see it get a reboot or a reimagining in some form. But this supposed final chapter was very divisive for a lot of people. If you've ever had a conversation about games with great dialogue and voice acting, chances are you've heard about the Legacy of Kain series. I've been lucky enough to review the original Legacy of Kain Blood Omen and Soul Reaver games here on the channel before, and like I said back then, I really feel this series has some of the best writing and the best voice acting in any series that I've played. So it was only a matter of time before I got to review the supposed conclusion to this highly praised and cult hit PlayStation franchise that many people talk about. The Legacy of Kain Defiance is the final chapter of the series for the PlayStation 2. Continuing the ongoing journey of Kain the Vampire Lord and the Wraith Raziel. The story continues right from the ending of Soul Reaver 2, and starts to bring together all the loose threads from both Blood Omen and the Soul Reaver games. We get more insight into the fate of Nosgoth, and how the ongoing conflict between Kain and Raziel affects everyone, including time itself. The story tries to be epic in scale with the consequences of events from previous games, but whether it was successful or not is highly debated among fans.
And so I returned to the sanctuary of my enemy, the fortress of the Sarafan Brotherhood, deemed impossible for any man to penetrate. Impossible for any man.
So let me reiterate this once again. Like I said in my previous reviews of Soul Reaver and Blood Omen, the casting and the voice acting in this game is fantastic. The casting is damn near perfect. Like, just hearing Kain's voice, hearing Raziel's voice, either during a voiceover or through some dialogue with another character, this stuff is like literally awesome. It just makes everything else about the game so much better. Even the casting of other characters like Mobius the Time Lord, the big elder god that you find, and many of the other secondary characters you run into, everybody just sounds so awesome. Every line that's delivered is delivered with such gravitas. Like, there's such weight behind every little piece of dialogue, and you don't really get that from a lot of other games, even now these days, but even some of the games that are like critically acclaimed. I just love the way that this game sounds when you hear characters talking. Now, that being said, however, there is a lot of issues that I have personally with the story of Defiance, and you could even argue it could be applied to many different parts of the Legacy of Kain, like overarching story. My biggest problem with Defiance's main plot is that certain things are just stretched out way too long, like it's overextended in certain parts. There's a certain section when you're playing as Raziel that just feels like it takes forever to get through, and not a lot happens. Like, it just feels like you're going around in circles and stuff. And on top of that, certain locations, granted there's certain places you're going to that are in different time periods, just feel like they're just overused way too much. Like, not a lot happens, not a lot of significant stuff goes down, and just you're there again and again, and it starts to get overly repetitive. There's also certain events within the game that feel like they're hyped up and just don't really have a good kind of outcome. They just feel like they're just there. They don't have enough like epic nature behind them, like what the rest of the series and the rest of the game is kind of building up to. But even then, the one big one that I feel like is like really the one thing that was the most disappointing was the hyped up final confrontation between Kain and Raziel. This is so built up very nicely throughout the entirety of the game, and even though they faced each other in previous Legacy of Kain games, but this one is supposed to be like the big like clash between the two of them. You have the music that swells when they finally meet, you get like these awesome little pieces of dialogue, and when the battle does happen, it just kind of ends and happens on a flop, and it's so disappointing. Now, trust me, we are going to get to the ending of this game a little bit later because there's a lot to say with that in relation to other things. But I do want to talk about the gameplay because, in comparison to some of the other Soul Reaver and Legacy of Kain Blood Omen games, there's some interesting things about this, but also stuff that's not that great. If you've been playing both the Soul Reaver and Blood Omen games up to this point, you'll notice a lot of things that are very similar here. Defiance is the first game where you could switch between characters you play as, alternating between Kain and Raziel during different chapters. For the most part, both control the same in almost every aspect. There's a few unique moves that each character has, but it's nothing too significant to really distinguish themselves from each other. They move and fight the same. So does that mean everything with the gameplay is pretty much straightforward and good? Honestly, Not at all. I would say much of what you do throughout the game is similar to more Soul Reaver than Blood Omen. Movement and combat kind of reminds me of those games, with a lot of combat seemingly influenced by other action series like Devil May Cry. Instead of puzzles being so abundant this time, it's the combat that takes the central focus more often. I like this change, but it definitely makes things significantly more repetitive overall. Now, while I enjoy the gameplay changes we see for Legacy of Kain Defiance, it also has some very big problems. The game suffers immensely from real bad glitches and bugged enemy behavior. There was a few times that my game nearly broke from Kain and Raziel getting caught in a structure, or even falling through the floor and locking up my entire game. Some battles I got into would have enemies that kept doing the same moves over and over again and hitting me without a chance to react or get away, causing me to take a huge hit to my health. There aren't many bosses in Defiance, which is fine, but the ones that we do get also suffer from terrible bugs that can make them significantly harder to play through. Sometimes the boss just won't do a specific move you need to see in order to go in for an attack, so you'll be moving around and avoiding attacks from them for a while before you even get a single opportunity to counterattack. It could get very annoying. Something I feel like a lot of people will get very annoyed at throughout the course of the game is the backtracking, and the main reason why I find this to be so annoying is because all the locations and the environments for the most part tend to look very similar, especially when you're going from one spot to another as multiple different characters, or just going in different directions to reach new areas that have opened up. Well, one big problem that comes with this is that you don't have a map. So you'll be going from one spot to another trying to find this one thing you need to interact with in order to progress the rest of the story, but everything looks so like very similar, everything has like similar architecture and stuff that you'll end up getting lost, and if anything, more than likely you'll probably end up consulting a guide in order to find out where exactly you need to go and where exactly you need to interact with certain objects to keep on the story. One thing I want to go back to is the final battle between Kain and Raziel, which happens towards the later portion of the game. It's not the final battle of the game itself, but the actual fight, like the actual boss fight, quote unquote, just feels like such a lackluster execution. It's just where both characters have all the moves available to them that you've gotten up to that point, but you're kind of going back and forth like throwing telekinetic like actual blasts at each other, and it just feels like things about it, the way it's done, like some of the technical aspects of the fight is just a little wonky. Like, I'll get knocked down multiple times by either Kain or Raziel when I'm playing as the other character, and when I try to get up to try to do a counterattack, I'm immediately hit by another one where I didn't have enough time to react to it. And it's a common problem between all the boss fights that I mentioned earlier, where certain characters or certain enemies will just constantly do the same repetitive attacks, and you'll be like stuck in this loop until you could find something to exploit to get out of there. And I find that to happen within the Kain and Raziel fight for like the dumbest of reasons. It almost ruins the confrontation for most people, outside of obviously the dialogue and the cutscenes that come with it. Now, speaking of endings, let's talk about the conclusion of the story to the game itself, and also all the post-game stuff that comes with it, because, yeah, this one is kind of disappointing too. So let's talk about post-game stuff. Like I mentioned before, things end rather abruptly by the time you finish the final battle within the game. Raziel seems to have disappeared, and Kain is left looking at the Pillars of Nosgoth with hope. While this does wrap up everything from the previous games, it feels like such a flop of a conclusion. This just ends and fades to black. I was honestly hoping for something a little bit more grand to fit the vibe we've seen from throughout the series, or at least an epic blowout to bring this story to an end. Understandably, people were not happy about this, but what about what you get afterwards for finishing the game? Is the bonus content worth the journey? I would actually say yes. Completing the game unlocks a bunch of artwork, promo images, viewable cutscenes, and even a bunch of behind-the-scenes features that showcase every aspect of the game's development. Unfortunately, there's no bonus items like costumes or other goodies that affect the game itself, So once you're done playing, you're done for good. There's very little reason to go back and play through everything again if I'm being honest. Maybe some bonus challenges or remixes to some chapters would have been nice, but I don't think that would have done much to improve the package here. The post-game bonuses that you get are exactly that, post-game rewards. When you're done, you're pretty much done.
How ironic if the creature that you made should prove your own undoing. Now, we finish this, once and for all.
So I will admit, I do like seeing some of the 3D renders, the sketches, the promo images from previous Legacy of Kain games like both Blood Omen and Soul Reaver. That stuff is really cool, and it is cool seeing little behind the scenes clips of like the voice acting and stuff. All that stuff is awesome. I do wish we got all the cutscenes, like the actual in-game cutscenes from both Blood Omen and Soul Reaver, all included in here, because again, this being the final chapter of this series, it would have been nice to have like a little spot to see everything there. You do get a little bit of things from Soul Reaver 1 and 2, and that's fine. It does feel like overall as a package, the extras are a little bit more catered to Soul Reaver than they are to Blood Omen. You know, you might feel a little bit differently about that, but that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this stuff, but I do feel like it would have been awesome or beneficial to this game to have like one big montage or special tribute to the Legacy of Kain as a whole, because again, this is the final chapter, this is the final game of this series, like rounding off this entire story, and I don't feel like we got something like that. Granted, there's a lot of extras in here, but once again, once you're done with the game, you get all this stuff and you enjoy it, there's little reason to go back and play through the game again, unless you're a die-hard Legacy of Kain fan. There's no like in-game stuff to like really change your experience, or you don't get to mess with the characters or get different powers and stuff. Once the game is done, that's it. There's no reason to play through it again, and that is kind of disappointing because most games that are like this, especially games that came afterwards that were released on multiple platforms, they'll have like other extras that you can unlock to go back and play the game again in some form or fashion. And with this, maybe this is probably a product of the time, maybe this is just the development team. I don't think they really thought of stuff like that, and that's a shame to see. Well now, with the series ending here, was it a successful landing? Can I recommend that you play through the Legacy of Kain Defiance on PlayStation 2? I can honestly say that you won't enjoy this game unless you've already played through the previous Blood Omen and Soul Reaver games. If not just for the conclusion of the big story, but for seeing and hearing Kain and Raziel talk again. If you go into this game alone without anything prior, I don't feel this will be a fun experience for you. The bugs and glitches I ran into nearly ruined my time playing through it, but it was the dialogue and the music that kept me going. Shifting control between Kain and Raziel was very cool, but I still would have improved a bunch of things here from throughout the game. If you're a big fan of the series already and just want to see how it all ends, then you'll be fine playing through Legacy of Kain Defiance. Everyone else, however, you'd be better off reading or watching a summary of it all online, rather than returning to this husk of a game.
Most ironic of all was the last gift that Raziel had given me. More powerful than the sword that now held his soul, more acute even than the vision his sacrifice had accorded me. The first bitter taste of that terrible illusion. Hope.
And there you go, everyone. Those are my thoughts about the Legacy of Kain Defiance on PS2. That was the version I played for this review. Now, granted, I didn't review every game here on the channel. I only did Blood Omen and Soul Reaver for the channel, but I have played all the other Legacy of Kain games, so I am a fan of the series. And I feel like because of that, I got the most out of this game. But if you just took this as a standalone and you never played any of the previous games, which I don't know why you wouldn't really get the most enjoyment out of it. For me personally, really the Legacy of Kain games, it's really the story and the lore and the characters and the voice acting that really kept me coming back for more, trying to see things through to the end. And I feel like for a lot of other people as well that have really stuck with this series, if you're not a fan of like the overarching lore of the universe, that's probably the main reason why you stuck with this. And if you take all that away and you just leave the game as is, it's really not that great. But of course, like any other game that I review on this channel, that's just my opinion about the Legacy of Kain Defiance. Let me know your own thoughts about this game down below in the comment section. Tell me, are you a big fan of Legacy of Kain in general? Which one is your favorite character, Kain or Raziel? Did you like Defiance if you played it? Or what are some of the other games out there or franchises that are very similar to the Legacy of Kain? I know a lot of people will probably bring up Devil May Cry, Castlevania, Dark Souls, or anything of like similar nature. What are the ones that you would recommend to other people? Tell me about that stuff down below in the comment section.
Thanks for watching the video, everyone. I appreciate your support and I hope you enjoyed checking it out. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and don't forget to leave me a like on this video and post a comment down below too. It helps out the channel a ton. You could also join my Discord server via the link in the description box to come be part of the community we have there. Whether you agree or disagree with me, come chat about games with everybody in there. It's a lot of fun people that I know you'll get a kick out of. Hope to see you again soon. Peace out, and stay epic, everybody.